Hello. So you've done your images in Photoshop and it's now time to bring them in. We can do a little bit of prep first though. Okay, so we want to see statistics. So we want to be able to see when we're editing vertices, edges and polygons, how many of what and how many there are altogether. We won't keep kind of regular check on this, but it's really useful for when you're selecting stuff to be able to see what you're selecting. Okay, so we'll go to the overlays and choose statistics, and so we can see already what's in this scene. So if we hit the cube, it's one of three objects. The others are cameras and lights. We can probably get rid of those, but I'll leave them for now. 8 vertices on a cube, 1 in each corner, 12 edges in all, 6 faces and 12 triangles. So what we're going to be doing is modelling a figure based on essentially this box. It won't be a cube for much longer, but it will still be a box, and we'll need to start messing around with it in edit mode. Now, the way Blender arrives, as it were, is you're placed in this sort of view looking down and to one of sides of the object. Now, the character, when it's made, will be facing down this y-axis here, green y-axis, and that's represented here. So if I just drag that round, now we're looking more like at the face of the character. Okay, we'll want to be editing serially things, positions, rotations and scales, so it makes sense to have those permanently on view in the side panel here, sidebar. You can go to the view menu and find it, but the N key is what brings in the useful sidebar information in all sorts of different windows. So when you're editing timelines and dope sheet and stuff, the N menu will bring up extra options there, and graph editor will bring up modifiers for that, like noise and cycles, so you can do repeat sequences. So the N is quite a good one to learn. I've got show off on here, and if it's not in the right place there, I'll move it, which is easy to do. It reflects what key presses I'm making and what mouse buttons I'm using as well, and sometimes both at once. Okay, so it's N on the keyboard, like that, and we can see that our cube, the currently selected object, is 2 meters cubed. Now that's somewhat bigger than we need. I'm going on a character that's about 1.6 meters tall, which is kind of medium-ish. But what this cube represents really is just the torso of the character, so it's actually going to be much smaller than that. So, as I said before, the thing to do really is to get our images in, but we do need a scalar. We need some bit of something that shows how big our character is, because the quick and dirty way of getting the images in doesn't give us scale. So what I'm going to do is go to add image reference. Okay, so now I've got to root through and find where my images are. So I've got my character is called Greg, and there's Greg. Now, because I've been speaking, not thinking, I've brought my image in so that it's at this kooky angle here, which is really just facing the angle of view. And if I've been sensible, I'll actually undo that, go to -y and try that one again. add image reference. It probably does accept BSDs, but JPEG is kind of worth getting into the discipline of using. Okay, so position is wrong, but actually the size is probably wrong because the cube's already 2 meters, so that's looking like a 4 meter image area. So it's got no dimensions here. The cube had dimensions, but this has just got scale. So that's of no use to us really. Okay, so let's get a scalar in place. So we go back up to the add, do add mesh plane. And there, that's better. So we've got dimensions here. So the plane is going to be 1.6. If you're going to put this in a game engine, you'll need to be aware of kind of lifelike sizing. So we're using a scale based on centimeters, but if we change the scalar to the unit to centimeters, then the size of all sorts of other default things is out by a factor of 100. So we are multiplying up our centimeters, dividing our centimeters by 100, and we get 1.6 meters instead of 160 centimeters. Okay, the plane has arrived at the wrong angle as well. Now the angle of the plane just needs to tip up, so we've got the height of the character reflected in the height of the plane, really. Okay, so we need to tip it round this x-axis. At any point when things start getting in the way, you can just remove them. Oh yeah, helpfully not. An image becomes an empty. So I'm going to double click that and change it to front view. It's at first it's a bit of a mania for naming things, and then once you've got an outliner full of different stuff, if you're building a whole scene up, it really makes then a lot of sense to identify things by a name that really tells you what they are. Okay, so we don't need to see the front view. Let's just concentrate on that plane. So I'm going to twizzle it around the x-axis. That says 90 already. Just make sure it happened where it's supposed to happen. So if I went to 0 with that, we should see something. Okay, time to get angled. There we go, it's still at some sort of crazy angle, but it really doesn't matter because it's I had the wrong thing selected, didn't I? There we go. Set that back. So it's the plane I want to change. So the plane is wants to twizzle around x90, and really it doesn't matter which side round it is. But it does need to sit on the grid area rather than kind of in front of it, or through it, I should say. So we're just going to raise it up. If it's 1.6, then it's 8.8 up. So the z-axis goes upwards, so we go z and go 0.8, and there it is. So scalar good. The only thing now is it's just right in the middle of where we want our object to be modelling from. So I'm just going to shove it back a couple of meters, 3 meters backwards, and the y-axis. I say backwards, but it's into positive y, so it's, I guess, more like forwards. Okay. Now we need to get our front view back, and this needs to be scaled to about the same size. So this object now is, who knows, it's of a particular size and scale, so I'm going to choose the scale and do it down by I. Now, if you grab one of these main axes indicators here, you'll just get one constrained axis. If you grab these little squares, you kind of get everything but the colour of the square. So this will scale in X and Z axes, but not in Y. There's no point in trying to scale a flat object in Y. Okay, so I'll get it roughly by I correct. Go to that view, can just do a little bit more there. There we go. And then I'm going to lift it up again by, because it's by I, it's about the right size. Maybe just a touch larger. That's more like it. Sometimes you can use these numbers to get an exact amount. It's probably 0.33. Something like that. Anyway. And then we just move that up. So z-axis 0.8. And we're good to go with that one. So the process for the side view is very much the same. Let's go into the side view. And remember that scale factor there. In fact, if we copy that, 0.32, whatever it is, copy. I use the keyboard to do that. So in our front view, we'll go add image reference, and this will be the left view. Probably going to need to spin this 180 so it's looking in the correct direction. Okay, now I'm just going to see where things are in relation to everything else. So its own scalar, if I grab that there, get it roughly right, and then I can put the magic number in that we copied from earlier. And then it was up Z 0.8. And now it's sitting on the grid area. Okay, now it's just the position that needs tweaking. So I'm going to need to move it, which is G, and now if I hit X, it will just send it along the X-axis. You can see that in the show-off view. And I'm just going to put it back a bit, make sure I've got enough space to be able to see the model. And then G, and I want to kind of drag it so that it's down this, right on this red line. So the character outline is on the red line, so that's going along the y-axis. So G for grab, and then hit Y, constrains it. There we go, right about that. Okay, twizzle around again, and then we're on to this one. We're going to send that back. Now you'll notice that I'm still in scale mode, which is okay if I'm doing a whole load of runs of scale operations, but if I want to fix the mode, I can go a left click there. Now there's a quick way to do that. So as you might recall, to quickly choose move, rotate and scale, it's G, R and S. G for grab, rotate and scale, the obvious ones. If you want to fix them for a while so that you can use the keyboard quickly to choose a different operation while doing, say, a run of moves, you want to do a quick rotate, then you hit R while you're in this mode. But if you want to change this mode without moving the cursor, spacebar R, and I'm in rotate mode now. Spacebar S, and I'm in scale. Spacebar G. So that does the kind of more fixed moves, and these are useful for when also you want to do this constrained movement. So if I go in close to this one and see the this green square, means I'm moving in blue and red axes only. Everything but the green. So do that, make sure that's right. So I'm just going to send this back anyway, just by hand. Doesn't need, and I've constrained the axis because I've used the arrowhead. Okay, so I want to push them back a little bit so I can actually see the model when I'm working with it. So if it's once you're kind of happy with the location, then it's time to, I've got to spin that one round, haven't I? Okay, so select that one, space R, and then I'm going to tweak the number by hand, so it's around the 180, it's on minus 90 at the minute, so I just make it 90, hit that, and now it's facing the other way, and then G, and I want to move it in the y-axis until the feet will end up on the red line. And then if you want to go back to select, now this tool is the box select tool, so that's space B. My fingers will occasionally get that wrong, maybe more than occasionally. Okay, so they're in the right position now. We need to bring the cube back and we can start jockeying that into position. Once we've got the scale thing, we can remove the plane from view. So also we want to get a flat view, make sure that these are lining up, which they do seem to be, and the cube needs to scale down. So for the cube to be small enough, we're best off kind of doing it by eye. So we'll go for the scale tool, grab it from the middle, and then try and work out which direction is the best one to get it right down. So it's only about torso sized. So if I go to G and then drag it up, that's about right. Okay, so now the width scale needs to change. So it's S, and scale it along the x-axis that way. And then we just need to have a look around the side and see that is way over. And again, let's get square on, space and S. I want to get it really so it fits in rather than meets the absolute limitations. Obviously it doesn't fit in that well there, but that's okay. In making the final form, it's easier to kind of pull both things out than it is to sort of start trying to press them back in together again. Because we're working with so few edges for a while, we want to keep it kind of looking spare and then give it corpulence later where it needs it. Okay, so I think that's about right. Okay, now we need to subdivide it. So so the next approach is to put the subdivisions in. So we want to make sure that it's got a centre line in the left to right axis, in the x-axis. It also needs to have a more or less centre line along the y-axis, so it's kind of divided that way. And then it kind of needs multiple lines. What we want is to subdivide it so that it's got essentially square polys. It doesn't have to be exact, but more or less square polys. Okay, so we're now going to go into edit mode for this object, which gives us access to the sub-objects. So these are vertex 1 on the keyboard, edge 2 on the keyboard, and poly or face sometimes. 3 on the keyboard, so 1, 2, 3, that's easy to remember. And quite often it's a nice quick way of getting selection done, to be fair. Okay, so we want to avoid doing this subdivision by hand, so using the automated tools. I think it's edge mode. Let me see. So we go to edge mode and then look at edge, and we've got subdivide. So now I do actually have all the edges selected, so I'm going to give it one subdivide and then start picking some edges more individually. So we do subdivide. Now there's a menu just popped up down here which is easy to miss, so fold it up and you can do more or do fewer, but we want one to start off with. Actually, okay, so then I'm just going to click on this edge here and then shift click this edge here, and then select, it says select loops, but we actually want to select rings, so you can see the effect. So that's a ring. It's kind of counterintuitive to me, these lines of edges along here look more like rings than loops, but anyway, these are rings of edges. Okay, so now if we go to edge again and subdivide, we've got a nice breakup there of the surface with just enough detail to be able to start planning some other areas. So the next cuts to make are subdivide here, but instead of one subdivision, we're going to do 2 subdivisions. So select loop, select rings, like that, and then edge, subdivide, and this time bump it up. And there we go, we've got some nice square faces. Now, that's probably not completely accurately a square, but it just has to look roughly square. It's not so important to make it completely and utterly square. Okay, so now we need number 3 on the keyboard. That should be reflecting there, which is supposed to be sending me into polygon mode. Let me try that again. There we go. Sometimes it's a bit lazy, like stuck in a tool or something, I don't know. Okay, so I want to drag select all these 4, which I can do just by dragging a box over them. Doesn't always work like that. I was lucky then, I will freely admit. So to extrude faces is E. Now you've got to be careful with this because it's really easy to do accidentally do an invisible extrude. The problem with it being invisible is there is a face constructed there somewhere between 2 rings of edges which are all in the same place because you've extruded up like that. Now if I want to do that again, is it Shift R? It is. So there's a keyboard shortcut for you, and again, and finally one more. So this is going to be the head ultimately, but I've made it kind of crude because it's something I need to do in this area before I do any work with the head. So I'm actually going to set the kind of boxing for the head, as it were, put some extra edges in, and that will kind of stop work that I do on the body from overflowing into the head, and vice versa as well. So it's that termination of the loops being constructed. So it's really easy to add subdivisions, but you don't want them to go all over everywhere especially areas like the face that need really detailed work doing on them at some point. Not for a while yet, though. Okay, so I think now we've reached a point where we can actually get rid of half of the model. So Blender offers a number of kind of symmetry automating possibilities. The one I found the best is the symmetry, the mirror modifier. And what makes it the best is it's kind of easy to put it on, easy to take it off, and easy then to put it back on again. And it does some of the processes automatically, so you don't end up with gaps or overlaps. But it's not universal. So although it's the best of a not reliable bunch, there's some operations you can't do with it on. But anyway, so the intention is to delete half of the model and have a computer process do the other half. So as you can see, I've got some kind of positioning to do with the head, but I'm kind of ready to do some of that now, actually. Okay, so let's go to vertex mode, and I'm going to drag select. There are a number of selection tools, but for this particular individual purpose, it's the select box that is needed. Now if I just select like that, I get the right vertices. I'm not getting any of the wrong ones, but I haven't got all of the right ones. So if I zoom around with my orbit tool and have a look around the back, I didn't get any of those around the back. Now the trick for that is, so I just did undo there, and then I'm just going to square the view back on, is to do X-ray view, which is counterintuitively Alt and Z. Amazing they saved Alt X for something else. Can't remember what it is. My see-through didn't work then. Let's try that again. There we go. I think it got stolen by show off. So now we're in see-through mode. We can select stuff around the back, which I can show you there. So see-through mode it's helpful, it's useful, but it's also functional. It allows you to select things around the back. Okay, so I'm going to hit the delete key now. Delete numpad, whatever it is. Okay, and I think again it stole the stole the focus. So the delete menu is quite extensive. We can delete just the selected thing. We can delete other stuff, which would be edges that are needed by these vertices probably. We can do dissolve, and now dissolve is quite good because you can take away stray vertices that aren't really doing much and leave the edges that they're stuck on, or even a vertex that's in the middle of a face. It will just dissolve them but leave the surrounding structure intact. But anyway, we need to be destructive and remove it. So I'm just going to orbit so we can see. Let's put the isometric back on, and we can see fairly well that structure looks okay. This is what's called the origin point. You can move it. It's not selectable, and just be aware that it's there. There are some things, some operations that where the tool that you're using, like it's the rotate tool, kind of spins around this point. Certain settings, like I say, you can move it, but we just don't need to. Just be aware it's not a vertex. It's just a kind of fixed part of the object that's necessary, but we don't really need to use it much for, at least for a good while yet, if at all. Okay, so the neck is obscenely long. I think I've overdone really the height of the original box. So I'm just going to G down the Z axis Make that a bit more reasonable. That is somewhat better. Drag the top up, G with the Z axis again, near the top, and then just bring that level a bit closer to the neck area. Now if I orbit this, you can see that I've got everything there, and do G again on the Z axis. But with the angled look, it's not quite so easy. A, to see what you're doing, and B, to select everything. But I can still do like that. So if you find it easier to keep an eye on things looking at an angle, then do so. But don't forget, your reference image is king or queen. And it's there for a reason. So don't spend too long away from it. Mega zoom. Okay, now if I start extruding the leg, I'll end up with a problem, which is there's no gap in between the legs. Now I'm sure there are models and characters in animation and games which have legs that meet in the middle for whatever reason, but if you're using an automated rigging process like we are going to be using, you don't have that luxury. You'll need to arrange some gap between the legs. Certainly in the model when you're setting it up with the rig, maybe you could kind of expand it back once it's been rigged, because the vertices are controlled by number, not by their position. So once they are controlled, you can maybe then just move them and kind of redo the initial pose. But otherwise it's kind of a lot of handwork to get a rig to fit in meshes with joined up legs. So let's make the structure for that. Now it's key for doing this sort of work that you're following a discipline of maintaining four-sided polygons, maintaining quads. Okay, so I'm going to use the cut tool here to make a separation point. Now, because I'm in X-ray mode, I can see through it, I might accidentally start putting new vertices in from the front, stretching over to the back without intending to. So if I go for Alt-Z again, turn X-ray off, then I'm only working on the front vertices. So this cut tool, it does this. So you left click, and you can zoom in and out to see where the next edge loop is. And I've just realised I've done this wrong, so I've gone the wrong way about it. So I'll undo that. Now I should have, in my model as a whole, I should have even number of vertices. Looks like I've got, okay, maybe I don't know as much as I thought I did. I'm in vertex mode, so I should be able to see where there are verts that I've accidentally put in. And I'm just going to have a quick look around, just see if there are any stray ones. No, it looks okay. Alright, so back to that view. What I meant to do was this. So I'm going to make a small square-ish in the corner there. Right click to snap off, and then join again. And that's redone the structure. Hit the return key. So if you go down here, look at the show off. Enter numpad, enter. So that's how we need to kind of break up the surface to make extra edges so that we can have maintain a gap in between the legs. Okay, it should do the same pattern around the back, but I'm going to ignore that for demonstration purposes. So use the cut tool, click down for every vertex you want to add. It will draw an edge between those. Right mouse button to stop that particular thread, cut off that thread and start a new one. Or if you've finished completely, you hit the enter key or return key, the one that you used for doing a new paragraph. Okay. So now it's time to look at the bottom of the mesh. Find it's disappeared. Oh, something I've got set up which is thankfully stayed, and if my zoom is working so that it follows where the mouse is. So if I can zoom out that way, I keep the left edge in, and I go here and it zooms off. So I'm zooming focused on where the mouse is. You may prefer that to what you're getting if you're not getting zoom into the mouse, but it's easy to set up. So we go to Edit, Preferences, Navigation. I'm on Orbit Around Selection, which is also really useful, and then Zoom to Mouse Position. They're the two changes I made from what was default. It seems to have kind of got the message in at least. So I'm going to cut here all the way over to here, and it's put, right click to stop, it's put a vertex over the edge that I've crossed, and then hit return key to stop for there. Like I say, I haven't got time to do around the back as well. Okay, now I've kind of lost the square poly effect, but that's because I've got kind of a big torso at that point. So if I go back to, I go to the -X view, I can probably reduce that a little bit there. That said, it's not that bad, to be honest. Okay, I'll just go to the selection tool, go 2 on the keyboard, select that edge, shift select that edge, G on the x-axis. So I'm just going to even out those so they're equal size really. It's not vital, but it will make the mesh appear a little bit tidier, especially when the low poly mesh starts to get more circular section, more cylindrical legs instead of square columns. Okay, so I went 3 now. I want to go polygon mode. Select those 4. Seem to be getting away with that. I don't know why. I don't usually. Oh no, here's a funny thing you get sometimes. Now, I'm using the scroll wheel to zoom in, and it kind of gets to a point where it doesn't want to zoom in anymore. If that happens, finger on the control key, doesn't matter which one, and then click down on the mouse wheel and just take it in a bit closer. There is a functional limit, though. There is a kind of clipping area. Is it there? View. Focal length 50mm. That seems reasonable. Clipping is when it refuses to show something. So if it's closer than 1 centimetre, it will clip, and if it's further away than 1,000 meters, it will clip. That seems a bit long to me, but I think it disappears way before that point. But yeah, that's quite a distance. This is what I was saying about changing the centimetre scale. It doesn't change. It keeps the numbers the same and changes the changes the view to centimetres, which means that's not a very big distance. So 0.01 centimetre. That's too close to be useful. Anyway, let's go back to item. Small digression there. Okay, so while we're here, I'm going to go to modelling just to make sure you can see everything in its best way. I need N on the keyboard to get this number pad back here. I need my overlay menu to get statistics back there, and I think that's where we were really, pretty much. So we've got these modelling tools down here again, which is quite useful. Now what? Okay, so I've got these selected. It's time to do an extrude. There's also a bevel. Does it do? No, it can only do extrude on the faces. So if I pre-select my scaling tool, I can extrude downwards and then scale in as we go. Okay, so we need to be looking down Y. E for extrude. Well, let me just check what I've got selected. Yeah, that's okay. Okay, so E to extrude down. Now sometimes, and I wish I knew what it was, it works out that you want to go kind of straight down and makes it happen down the Z-axis, which is ideal. I'm taking it down to this point down here, which is where I identified where the knee joint would be. Now, I don't want to massively what's the word? Adjust it from the image, so I've got a little bit of work here to bring those into line where my reference drawing says they should be. Scale that a little bit further. Now I need them G down the x-axis, just to start to make that splay over. And then I probably need to scale it round this axis too. And a bit of G on the y-axis, just to send it back a piece. Okay, but minus Y view. And then I'm going to go back to no. I'll do the extrude and then move the torso bits around. Okay, so E on the keyboard again to extrude, and send it to just inside the tongues on the high top trainers, and then G on the x-axis again, and that's more or less okay. Okay, and then one final extrude down to the ground. Okay, so I'm just going to adjust the mesh here, so these vertices can all shift downwards, down the Z-axis, so we can get the groin synchronized. Okay, so I'm going to need to go, let's go space B, stop the extrusion and scaling happening, and I need Alt Z to go see through, and then I'll just do it by drag selecting all those as faces instead, so G and then Z to constrain, and it should go about there. And if you're fussy about kind of unevenness there, you could move those down a bit. The trick is, or the key is, to make sure that you don't do anything that's going on the seam line here. Okay, and now we can start to take a bit of an angled look, because I want to build some feet out. So I'm going to do the feet by kind of a 3D view, and then bring them more in line with my reference symmetry. I'm starting to feel like I should have made the feet bigger in the reference image, but I can push that a little bit, see how it looks. But in doubt, go back to your reference image. So select those, E for extrude, and it's thankfully snapped onto the right axis, and then another bit for the toes. So toes a bit that I think you'll get some manoeuvrability of the toes with the mocap. Okay, so let's G those down. And then, although it's kind of blocky looking, you can do quite a lot by, first of all, G'ing down the x-axis there, and then go in edge mode, and so that edge G's down the y-axis, the green one, like that. That one wants to go back a bit as well. In fact, I'm going to space G, oops, space G. I can just be lazier and use these. The idea is to keep all of the bottom of the foot flat to the floor still, so don't do any scaling operation that includes any of the bottom vertices or edges. Just moving things around for the moment. Okay, and if you want the foot to kind of turn out a bit, then grab, shift, grab, and just push it out a little bit. And back if you think the foot's too long. And then, yeah, let's go edge mode, that one. Let's drag that back a bit and then push it out a bit as well. That's better. So it's more of a shoe than a foot that we're shaping, but there are some. Okay, so kind of major limbs. We're going to do hands as mitts for the moment. Maybe get into individual fingers as a possibility later. Okay, I've just noticed here what's going to be becoming the arm and the shoulder. Could do with a bit of redesigning. So Alt Z, see through, drag, select. And we'll just there, that's a bit better. Oops. One thing you could try in cases like this is scaling. Actually, scaling all these in the z-axis will just stretch them up a bit and make them even out. We don't really need to do that though. Okay, now I spoke before about symmetry and using the symmetry modifier. It's kind of a good time now to see some of the things we might get with the symmetry modifier. So before you put the symmetry modifier on, you've got to check that all your vertices on the center line are actually on the center line. They all need to be at in the same location on the x-axis, which should ideally be 0. There's not an easy way of making that happen in Blender, so kind of you just need to keep your wits about you and be careful. If it does go wrong, it's not a disaster, but yeah, it's better if you possibly can to keep things your centre lines are starting so that they can just always be in that exact spot, and it makes mirroring operations fuss free if you can manage that. Okay, so if things do go a bit bumpy there, one option you can have is, like I've done, is select them all by dragging down, and as long as they are all ones that are supposed to be on the 0 point of the x-axis, you can actually scale them. So you scale them to 0 on the x-axis, then they'll have a kind of minimal variation away from one another if one got jogged somewhere along the way. Okay, so I did that really just as a kind of belt and braces fix, just in case something was off. I couldn't see anything off, but who knows. So I'm going to deselect now. I'll just go to object mode. Let's go to object mode, and then you see this little spanner symbol here. Click that one and go add modifier, choose mirror, and by default it's on the x-axis. Okay, so go back to edit mode, and now if I, for instance, start building out an arm, see, when you've got reference drawing, you can kind of get away without having symmetry on, because you can sort of see half of the figure anyway in the reference drawing, and you can see where the centre is of your drawing, so it's easy to just get by without for a while. But I appreciate at some points you do want to kind of get a decent idea of the scale of the figure. I think this again is a face on and extrude. Now when I extrude, it's going to go straight out the side, and effectively I'm going to build it up so that it goes towards the edge of the image. Of course, to do that I need to be in a non-perspectival mode, like that. It's going to look a bit out of scale because everything's also kind of blocky and hard-cornered, but that will soon change. You just got to see it for the structure rather than see it for the shape for a bit. Okay, it's time to extrude again. And then scale that down. Now you can make it a little bit flatter, top to bottom, because the palms are going to be pointing downwards. So that's eventually going to be a kind of flat hand. I'm going to leave it there, I think. Yeah, that's a good point to start. Stop even. So file, save as, and it's going to be Greg lesson. This plus sign is really good, so you do save as, and you want another version of the same file, you hit plus sign and it adds a number to it, and it'll change that 1 to 2 the next time I do that. Okay, so that's all for the moment, but this should suit most of you. By the way, if you're doing an animal head, The structure I'm going to propose to create here can easily go animal ways, even if the model I'm choosing is more or less human or humanoid. Okay, so that's it for this one for the moment. Thanks.